If there's another book in the Bible that is heavily influenced by Isaiah, then it's Revelation. Okay. But the only way to see that is to do what I did. I sat down and traced every word, every sentence in Revelation to its original source. Revelation is more like a collation of biblical material. It was a crazy study. I told you I'm a little bit crazy. Who wants to do something like that? And then that's when I discovered just how heavily dependent the book is in Isaiah. Strangely, Isaiah is not quoted directly in Revelation. But you cannot read Revelation without seeing or hearing Isaiah at every turn of the book. The other books that influence Revelation heavily are Ezekiel and Zechariah. Okay. Ezekiel and Zechariah influence Revelation more in terms of the symbols, Isaiah in terms of the concepts and the names for Christ. Okay, but we'll look at some of those. We've already seen that he's the prophet of the New Testament. He's quoted 2 times more than any major prophet and all the prophets. He's quoted, paraphrased, alluded, echoed throughout the New Testament. This material we've seen 150 times come from that first part of the book, 168 times come from that central part, and then the rest from the third part of the book. Isaiah is not quoted by name in Revelation. Okay, so that's why it's easy to miss the connections. Okay. And perhaps because the connections are too many that John just didn't make those kinds of, didn't give that kind of information. However, there are 50 certain and probable allusions to Isaiah in Revelation. This is a scholarly study. It's not something, you have to know both Greek and Hebrew to be able to do this, actually. Or if you have very good Bible translation. Okay, for those of you who are thinking about serious Bible studies, probably the best versions on the market today for serious Bible study are the New Revised Standard Version, which is preferred by a lot of scholars, and the Holman Christian Bible, which is the one that I'm using at the moment. Okay, those are probably the 2 best study versions. Okay, if you want good Bible for just reading pleasure, then the New Living Translation, NLT. Okay. Good News Bible. Okay. The NIV is very strange. It's neither too much one way or the other. It doesn't read very well. It's not too good for scholarly studies. Okay. Some of you may still love the King James, and nothing wrong with that as long as you remember that the English is obsolete. There are over 40,000 words in the King James Bible whose meanings have completely changed or even disappeared from modern English. Okay, so as long as you recognize that, it's fine. The one thing you cannot do with the King James Bible is study poetry. You cannot see any of the poetry of the Bible in the King James because they didn't understand anything about biblical poetry when it was translated. Okay, it's not their fault. Those things came later in Christian studies. Okay. The NRSV and the HCSB are pretty good with the poetry. They have done a lot of work to make sure that you can see the poems, where the shifts are from prose, poetry, and so on. So when you're doing this kind of study, where you're tracking things back and forth through the Bible, then it's important that the same constructions and the same words and phrases appear. Otherwise, how do you track it? When you are in America, or Thailand, Malaysia, or Japan, you know a Toyota Corolla for a Toyota Corolla. Those of you who are into cars like me. I know some people who cannot tell a Honda from a Toyota, okay? But that's not the issue. Now, how do we know a Toyota Corolla in America is a Toyota Corolla there and here? Come on, we have some car people here. Logo. The logo, okay? Yes, the shape of the car or the platform of the car is very much the same everywhere. So a Toyota Corolla looks more or less the same. There may be slight variations, but they look more or less the same everywhere. That's how we can identify cars. Oh, that's a Maserati, or that's a Lamborghini, or Bugatti Veyron. That's my favorite supercar, one that I know I can never ever own, even if I live 10 lifetimes. But I do own a lot of supercars, but they are the scale models that decorate one of my bookshelves, See, you have to be practical in life. What you cannot have one way, you can have another way. Why deny yourself everything? The only thing you cannot do that with is the kingdom of God. There's only one way, and that is through Christ. But everything else in life, And so those of us who enjoy cars, have strange hobbies, and so on. But because of the way those cars are built, we can identify them no matter where they are. And the same goes with scripture, with truth. And so by seeing a certain phrase in Isaiah, and then you see it again in Revelation, you know that these two are directly connected to each other, even though they come in two different testaments and they're centuries apart or whatever. 23 sections of Isaiah are found in the book of Revelation. And the passages that recur several times are these: Isaiah 6, 34, 60, and 65. And so these you can track directly because even the words are the same. Okay? And so we have some very clear, you know what's in here, right? Isaiah 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne high and elevated, and his robe filled the temple. The temple doors shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. And then he heard the voice of the angels crying, "Holy, holy, holy is Yahweh Sabaoth. The whole earth is full of his goodness, or the fullness of the earth is his glory." That song is replicated in total with some addition in Revelation chapter 4. So we know the connection there is direct. So also with the new creation, etc. So these are very direct strands, but they're not the only ones. Okay? The way that Isaiah describes his encounter with God and the way that John describes his encounter with God, what we call a visionary experience, is very much the same. Same kind of language, same kind of experience. The titles for Jesus and the descriptions, almost all of them in John come from Isaiah. In Revelation, you have so many titles for Jesus. The only one that doesn't exist in Isaiah is Alpha and Omega, because that's Greek. It's against Hebrew. It's not possible. But every other title that you could think of is there in Isaiah. It's almost like John just simply copied all the names of God from Isaiah and transfers it to Jesus. And all those names in Isaiah are applied to Yahweh. So we know that Jesus of Revelation in particular is none other than Yahweh of the Old Testament. So that line is very clear. Eschatology, about end-time events, is similar. And then, of course, obviously the new realities. New heaven, new earth. There are some slight variations, about 2 or 3 points of variation between Revelation and Isaiah. The rest is more or less the same, sometimes using exact phraseology. New heaven, new earth. Something passed away, something not remembered, something gone, and so on, about Jerusalem. Then there are what we call dominant parallels. They are so close that they have to be seen in the same light. God's throne room description. The description about the origin of evil. You know that you cannot really fully explain Revelation 12 without Isaiah 14. Who is this dragon that fight against Michael? And who is this Michael? Isaiah 14 is the first time that this picture is given. By the way, what's the name of that angel? Bible quiz time. The one who wanted to overthrow God. The one who wanted the name. The morning star. His name is not Lucifer. I'm sorry. That is Latin translation of his name. Lucifer. Morning star. Lucifer. Are we reading the same Bible? Okay, his name, because the name first appeared in Hebrew, is Hallel ben Shachar. Lucifer is a direct translation, a Latin translation of Hallel ben Shachar. Lucifer was not a name, but Jerome capitalized it to make sure that people know it's referring to Satan, and so it got stopped. Because the Latin Bible was used for over 1,000 years. So it got stuck in Christian jargon. But the name in Hebrew, you won't find Lucifer anywhere in, in the Hebrew Bible. His name is Hillel ben Shachar. Literally translated, Hillel means the shining one, ben Shachar means the son of the morning. So the shining one, the son of the morning. That name is only used one more time in the Bible, in Revelation, but for Jesus. Exact translation. Morning star is a rough translation of it. It's a longer sentence in Hebrew. Literally, it means the shining one who is the son of the morning. Yeah, that's why shortened it to morning star is kind of acceptable. But it's only used twice in the Bible. In Isaiah for that rebellious angel, and in Revelation for Jesus. And so it tells us who the battle was against. See, he wanted to replace Christ, basically. But you get that picture to clarify Revelation 12, the dragon and Michael, the war in heaven. This is Isaiah. The information is there. We just never really saw it before. Descriptions of the new heaven and new earth are identical, as I said, but for 2 or 3 points of departure. Description of angels. Can you think of some Bible passages where we have fairly detailed descriptions of angels? Obviously these two, Isaiah 6, Revelation 4. Where else? Not just angels in general. Ezekiel, chapter 1. But Ezekiel chapter 1 is very different from these two. Revelation 4 and Isaiah 6, very similar descriptions. Ezekiel's description is, it's like watching a science fiction movie. Literally. Okay. So there are varying descriptions, but these two are the ones that are similar. And one of the similarities about the angels around the throne of God pertains to the number of wings and their physical appearance as bright and shining, burning ones. Isaiah uses the word seraphim. Seraphim literally means the burning ones, because they were so filled with light and glory, it looked like they were on fire. Okay. Revelation simply describes them as being bright and glorious. The result of this encounter with God, which scholars call theophany, is the same in Revelation and in Isaiah. When the prophets have a vision where they see God in all His glory, the automatic result was the feeling of this is going to be the end of their lives. What did Isaiah say when he saw God on His throne? Woe am I, for I am lost. John said something very similar. Okay, and in both stories you have the process of cleansing by God that then allows them to be servants of God. Now, Ezekiel had a vision too, and Daniel had vision of God's throne as well. Daniel was a strange one. He fainted 3 times. 3 times Gabriel had to come and wake him up. You're still alive. Wake up, you're not dead yet. Ezekiel's visions are the strangest visions in the Bible. I think you know that by now if you've been reading your Bible. And then this one. Most people, when they look at Isaiah, they think of the messianic prophecies. But there are many songs in the book. Most people, when they think of Revelation, they think of end-time prophecies and so on. But there are 28 songs in the book of Revelation. And the songs follow similar thought lines in the 2 books. The only other book in the Bible that has more songs than these two is, obviously, it's a song book. It has to, right? Psalms. But apart from Psalms, there are more songs in Isaiah and Revelation than anywhere else in the Bible. These 2 prophets, who are the most similar in their thought, in their visions of God, in the view of ultimate realities, they are the ones who record songs. Strangely, I haven't seen any serious songs from Isaiah other than Handel's Messiah. That's one or two. And no songs from the Revelation songs. So those of you who are into music, I challenge you to take one of those Revelation songs and turn it into a worship song. It's amazing how sometimes we can study a book of the Bible and we only see one thing when it's offering us multiple possibilities. And the songs in Isaiah are all about redemption. The songs in Revelation are all about victory. They are what we call victory chants. Because in both books, you see this liberation of God's people. God has resolved the problem of sin. He has made a new heaven and new earth. And so you must sing. Both books, outside of the Psalms, also use the phrase sing a new song. So there are only 3 books in the Bible that uses that expression, sing a new song to the Lord. Isaiah, Psalms, and Revelation. You expect it in Psalms, of course. It's a songbook, right? But it's peculiar that it appears over here. Many phrases that Christians use normally started in Isaiah, went through Revelation, and became part of Christian language. The expression, holy, holy is the Lord. Do you know how many hymns and songs have employed that particular phrase over the centuries? Yeah, too many. It's been a popular phrase. The phrase, the key of the house of David, started in Isaiah 22, moved into Revelation 3, and became part of Christian language. When we speak about the connection between David and Jesus. This one, the skies shall roll up like a scroll. It also appears in Psalms, started in Isaiah, adopted by Revelation, and became part of Christian jargon. Whenever Christians speak about the end of the world, that's one of the expressions they will use. The sky will roll up like a scroll. And they think it comes from Revelation. No, it comes from Isaiah. The first and the last. Isaiah is the only Old Testament writer who uses this expression over and over and over. And then in the New Testament, only John in Revelation, over and over and over. And Christians have adopted that whenever. It's one of our favorite ways of speaking about God, about Jesus particularly. It's the first and the last. How about this one? Come, everyone who thirsts, come and drink. Isaiah 55 became part of the final invitation in the book of Revelation, became part of Christian evangelism. You know, for centuries, Christians have been using this phrase in evangelistic meetings as an appeal, an invitation for people to become Christians, to accept Jesus. May not be as popular these days, but it's been part of Christian language for a considerable length of time. This one about God's gates, or the gates of the city being open. The sun shall be no more by light or day. Again, these have appeared in songs. And behold, I create new heavens and new earth. Started in Isaiah, adopted in Revelation, and Christians have been using it ever since. Now comes the long drive. A slow drive through the motorway. You see, when I'm driving down the motorway, at the moment I drive a Mazda 2. So one of the things I do as I drive Mazda 2 is to see how many Mazda 2s are on the road. How many of you do that, those people drive? Okay, somebody there. The rest of you don't? Well, many of you don't drive, many of you don't pay attention to what's on the road. And so I will try to see, oh, that's a Mazda 2. I call them cousins. You know? The white cousin, the red cousin, the blue cousin. Only basically 4 colors in Thailand. Okay, I drive the brown cousin. Okay? And so I tried to spot out all the Mazda 2 of my generation Mazda, as well as the previous generation Mazda, or the newer generation. It's just a thing I do to keep from falling asleep on the motorway. You know, besides cursing all the drivers around me. This helps me to keep awake. We call this intertextuality, connecting to all the Mazda 2s on the road. Okay, so what I'm going to run next, the next few slides, don't write notes, just look, focus. You can get the material later if you want. How did things get from Isaiah, and how much from Isaiah into Revelation? Okay, and I've done this based on the prophecies in Revelation. For example, the descriptions about God on the throne in Revelation 4, the one seated on the throne. Many of the phraseology there come directly from Isaiah. And in the case of the description of the angels, it's almost verbatim. Okay. John didn't invent anything new. He simply used the material that already existed in this book. For those of you who may not be aware, there are 5 primary visions of Christ in Revelation, scattered at even intervals throughout the book. Okay? And in every one of those visions, everything comes out of Isaiah, except for, like I said, Alpha and Omega, which is a Greek term, so it cannot be in Isaiah. First and last, beginning and end, okay? Over and over, the key of the house of David, okay, coming from Isaiah, the root of David, Isaiah 11, slaughtered lamb, Isaiah 53. Okay. There's so much of Isaiah in this book. In a way, to understand what is being said in Revelation, you have to go back to the original statement to see what John has brought over from that. Some more descriptions of Christ, first and last appearing where David, Jesse experience, then this one, the Hillel ben Shachar, used only twice in the Bible for the angel who rebelled against God in Isaiah and for Christ. So we know who the battle was against. This was really a struggle between that angel and Jesus. And that is highlighted in Jude, in Revelation, in Daniel 12. Okay, it's always been about that. You see, sin exists because of this conflict. When this angel, who is so blessed by God, decided he wanted to replace Christ, the one known as Yahweh in the Old Testament, then sin came into our universe. And this is why God had to take his time to resolve the problem, because it's not simply a question of dealing with our failures. In some ways, we are like caught in the crossfire. Okay. And so God has to resolve that higher cosmic conflict as well in order to solve the problem. The vision of the 24 elders. Again, you have things from Isaiah that come into that vision. And then this one, sing a new song. The 24 elders are told to sing, that they sang a new song to God. Isaiah uses that same expression, sing a new song, which is found only in these 2 books and Psalms. Where else? The 144,000. There are so many theories about the 144,000, and I really don't care about the theories because this is an apocalyptic symbol. Okay? It represents God's people. Sing a new song, redeemed from the earth, redeemed of Yahweh, redeemed from the human race that we call Yahweh's redeemed, not defiled, not defiled. So clearly the prophecies of Revelation are heavily influenced by Isaiah. Thought, language, words, phrases, sometimes directly transported into that book. The great multitude. Those of you who have studied Revelation, there are 3 depictions of God's people in Revelation. The 24 elders, the 144,000, and the great multitude. Christians have often debated about being in the 144,000. It doesn't matter. As long as you are in the multitude, you'll be in heaven. You don't have to be among the 24 or the 144,000. All 3 groups end up in the same place. Okay? So, multitude is fine for me. People who want to debate, 144,000 are only, like Jehovah's Witnesses believe it's only Jehovah's Witnesses. There was a group in Russia that believed only people from that group would be in the 144,000 and so on. Okay? About their clothes, about thirst, about sun and heat, about springs of living water, about God wiping away tears. That expression came from Isaiah. About victory, about singing a new song. You can find this with every vision of Revelation. The vision about the celestial woman in Revelation 12 and 13 uses language from Isaiah. The vision about the dragon, obviously, uses language from Isaiah, not just 14 but also 27. There's a reason why he's called the serpent, okay, in Revelation. Visions about the dragon, some more. All Isaiah, including why the ending in Revelation is always the fire, because that was first predicted in Isaiah. Visions about the other woman in Revelation, the Babylon, the prostitute, the debased woman. The expressions here are really very close to each other, and also to some texts in Ezekiel as well, okay? Including the expression "fallen Babylon has fallen." That started in Isaiah, and a lot of Christians use this phrase, "Babylon has fallen." It's an Isaiah phrase. The seven seals, even things that look very unique and new to Revelation, are influenced by texts from Isaiah. You can see some of the language here, okay? The moons, the scroll, etc. The seven plagues, even in the seven plagues, you have some Isaiah texts that reappear. Remember I showed you at the beginning that I believe Revelation is saturated with Isaiah material. The winepress judgment, this is another one with a lot of connections, a lot of Mazda 2s in here, even though it's two different highways. The rider in chapter 19, very similar words and expressions that are being used over and over, including this one, which appears, by the way, in only these two passages, this great supper of God, okay, in Isaiah as well as in Revelation. And there are many things like that that appear only in these two books. Then, of course, the new heavens and new earth. Obvious and very long connections between these two. Okay, there are some slight differences, but the rest are very much the same. Notice the expression, God will wipe away every tear, God will wipe away every tear, and so on. And then the ending of Revelation, another description, including this one, and the invitation from Isaiah 55. And so Revelation is hard to understand, especially conceptually, without contending with Isaiah first. I hope you notice, I know we went through that rather fast, but I hope you notice that almost every title of Christ, other than Alpha and Omega in Revelation, comes directly from Isaiah. Sometimes the words are not even changed. And so the Jesus that we meet in Revelation, and therefore the Gospel, is the same God that Isaiah witnessed. This is the God who looks at his people at one point and says, sinful nation. But then after a while he says, comfort my people. But ultimately he says what? Rise, shine, for your light has come, and God's glory shines upon you. Then access with new heaven and new earth. See, Isaiah is not just simply another book. It is much more important to Christian faith than we have understood, especially in modern times. Or earlier Christians in the early periods, they seem to have understood the book a lot better than we do. And I'm glad in a way that you are doing this. We are going through the book in a very cursory way. We cannot cover it in detail. Okay, it's a very long book. It's the second longest book in the Bible. You know that. So if you were to study it bit by bit. But I hope at least it has piqued your interest. Tomorrow we'll look at a few specific concepts from the book that really stand out. But I hope some of this journey has piqued your interest. Wow, there's so much for us here. This is not just a text for the Qumran community. This is not just a book for earlier periods of history. No, this is highly relevant to us today, to what it means to be Christian today. Now, there are two names for Jesus in Matthew. Yeshua, which means Yahweh saved, and that's the same meaning for Isaiah's name. Isaiah means Yahweh saved. Emmanuel, which means God is with us, and Isaiah, probably his second son, is also Emmanuel. So you've got these connections to the New Testament that are so strong that you cannot ignore them. And I would suggest that you go back to Isaiah, and with some of the topics we will look at tomorrow, I'll give you a bit fuller picture, and then go forwards from there to the Gospels, to Revelation. I think you'll get a clearer picture of what Christian gospel really is. The gospel prophet, the prince of prophet, the evangelical prophet, whatever name you want to give to him. They have given him the timeless prophet, right? Something like that. And that's a good name too, because his message is timeless.